I'm Bri, a professional chef and hunter. I left my job as a culinary chef instructor to follow my passion for the outdoors. Now I'm using my talent in the kitchen to develop the most amazing wild game recipes. Join me as I travel across America to bring the wilderness to table. This episode is all about making pheasant the star. We're gonna start off with a beautiful cream of mushroom soup that we're gonna top off with creamy crème fraiche, a little bit of truffle oil, and fresh chives. Then we're moving on to the main entree, the star. We're gonna do a Pheasant Ballotine, and that is going to be stuffed with mushrooms. Then we're gonna serve that with a red wine truffle sauce and Pomme puree, and to finish with a little bit of sweetness, some glazed carrots. Then for dessert, we're having a chai spiced Creme Brulee with Saba Whipped Cream. This episode is all about pheasant that I've harvested myself in the beautiful fields of Georgia with my partner in crime, Remy. We're starting off our meal with dessert first. Why? Because I love dessert. No, but really, we're going to make a chai spiced creme brulee, and we're gonna make it first because I want the creme brulee to set while we're finishing our meal. So I'm gonna show you how I assemble my creme brulee and get it going. It's a really easy recipe. Everything can be done in one bowl. We're gonna start with our bowl. I have 2 cups of heavy cream. We're gonna place into the bowl. Then we're gonna add 1 cup of half and half. Then we're gonna sweeten it up with some sugar. Then I have 4 egg yolks. Egg yolks are the thickening agent for our creme brulee. And I'm also gonna add 1 whole egg to that as well. These eggs are gonna be the thickening agent for our creme brulee. I'm gonna give them a quick whisk all together before I introduce them into the cream. Just a little whisk to get them all going. And I'm gonna add them to the cream, just like that. Then we're gonna season our batter with vanilla bean paste, about a tablespoon. I love vanilla bean paste. It still has flecks of vanilla bean in there, which I love, as opposed to vanilla extract that doesn't. Then I have my spices. Chai spice is actually just a combination of cinnamon, cardamom, cloves, and allspice. So I have all my spices ready to go. I'm just gonna get them into my batter. And now I'm gonna give it a final whisk, get all that sugar incorporated into the heavy cream and get those spices going. You wanna make sure you whisk it really well because you don't want your spices to clump, because nobody wants to eat clumps of spices. But you don't also want to incorporate too much air into the batter as well, because you don't want like air bubbles in your creme brulee. It should be nice and smooth and creamy and velvety in texture when it's all cooked. So that looks perfect right there. Now, because I can be clumsy sometimes, I'm putting my batter into an easier bowl to pour them into my ramekins. I have 4 ramekins set out, and I already have a pot of water that's heating up. We're going to cook our creme brulee in a water bath. That water bath is going to be essential to the cooking method for our creme brulee. Why? Because we want that steam of the water when it's cooking in the oven, or baking in the oven, I should say, to help steam those creme brulee, and they're gonna help cook them more evenly. And we all want creamy perfection when it comes out of the oven. So there's our creme brulee. It's a super easy recipe. I have my oven set to 350 degrees. They're going to bake for about 30 to 35 minutes. I would check them at 30 minutes, and if they still wiggle, give them about 2 minutes in increments and go up to 35. And I would definitely be pulling them out of the oven by 35 minutes because we don't want to overbake them. I'm going to get these into the oven. And now I have my water that's been boiling. Now I'm going to create the water bath by gently pouring the water into the pan, but not the creme brulee. And there you go. I'm going to get those all baking, and we're going to check on them at about 30 minutes. To start our meal off, we're going to start with a creamy cream of mushroom soup. It's going to be velvety and earthy and creamy, and it's going to be delicious. Plus, the bonus is it's super easy to make, and you're going to impress all your guests when you make them this soup. They're going to think they went to a fancy restaurant. I'm going to start off by dicing one onion. I'm using a Vidalia onion. I like the Vidalia onions, one, because they're not overpowering, but they have an amazing onion flavor to them. Sometimes onions can be so overpowering that they overtake every ingredient in a dish. So choosing the right onions is key. For example, if I did red onions in this soup, all you would taste is red onions, and I should just name it red onion soup. So that's why I'm going with a mild onion today. I'm going to quarter dice my Vidalia onion. I want them, again, all the same size so that they all cook at the same time. And give this a chop. This is an easy soup that you can put together probably in the first 20 minutes of your meal, and you can let it sit on low heat while you're cooking the rest of your meal, and it's only going to improve in texture and flavor. So that's the good thing about this soup, is you can make it ahead of time and not have to worry about it. It's a set it and forget it kind of soup, and it's really beautiful in flavor. So now I'm just going to get all my onions into my pot. This meal is also a one-pot wonder. You don't have to do anything. Every ingredient goes in it, and then we're gonna blend it in the pot, and you're gonna serve it from the pot. So less dishes, less cleanup. We're gonna get that going. Get my heat on, medium-high heat, because we're gonna saute the onions. We do wanna get a little caramelization on them. I'm going to add some butter to it. Why? Because butter makes everything better. But really, we need some oil in the pan, and that butter is going to add a really nice savory flavor to our soup. But then again, when doesn't butter make everything taste more delicious? So there we go. We're going to get that butter melting, get those onions cooking down. While those onions are cooking, I'm going to get my mushrooms sliced. I have cremini mushrooms here. You know those white little mushrooms you see in the grocery store? They're called button mushrooms. You don't want those for this soup. You can use different types of mushrooms for this soup, ones that are on hand, porcini, portobello, things like that. You do want like a brown, earthy mushroom for this soup, because that's where all the flavor is going to come from. Try to stay away from mushrooms that are white in color. They're very mild in flavor. You can garnish with them, just don't use them as the main flavoring agent of your soup. So while I get these going, I want to make sure my onions are not burning in the pan as I'm chopping my mushrooms. I'm just giving these a rough chop, very rough. Don't worry, they don't have to. Mushrooms are so soft that, granted, you don't want huge pieces, and so they'll cook pretty evenly, mushrooms. They're so soft. You don't want huge pieces. You want them to be pretty much the same, but you really don't have to worry about it as much as onions. Just give them a rough chop. It's all good. These don't have to look pretty. They're going to get pureed. Get that butter. Get them all tossed in that butter. Beautiful. Gonna let these brown now. And now I'm going to season our onions with salt, because we want that excess water that those onions are carrying to evaporate out. I'm also gonna add a dash of pepper because I still wanna build on flavors. Every time we put something in the pot, we're building flavors, building flavors. Think of it as layering and layering and layering. And this is really important technique with soups. You wanna season every layer. We're gonna season the mushrooms, season the onions, season the cream. And that is what's gonna get us a really delicious and flavorful soup. My house is gonna smell equally delicious as soon as I get these mushrooms in the pan. Part of me wishes I could bottle up that scent of garlic and onions. You know, as a kid, I always remember walking down in the morning on Thanksgiving Day. My dad would wake up so early in the morning to get the turkey prepared, and the house would smell like garlic and onions cooking, and that was like the best thing to wake up to. So that's what it always reminds me of when I'm cooking in the kitchen. Now that my mushrooms are added, I'm going to give those a stir so that they get all tossed in that butter as well. And y'all know what I'm going to do next because I just said it. I'm going to layer my seasonings, some more salt and some more pepper. Granted, I'm not adding like a tablespoon at a time. We're talking like a quarter to a half a teaspoon at a time. We don't want to over salt our soup. So now we're going to get that simmering. So a cream of mushroom soup is a thick soup. And I'm going to show you how to thicken our soup from the beginning. We have all-purpose flour. I'm going to add it to my pot. It's going to mix with the butter that's surrounding the mushrooms and the onions, and it's going to create a roux. A roux is what thickens your soup. So now I got my flour in the pot, and we're going to mix it all together so that the heat and that roux will thicken our soup up nicely. Now we're going to add chicken stock, and then we're going to let that simmer on medium-high for about 25 to 30 minutes before we blend. But while that is simmering, I'm going to check on my creme brulee and see if they're done. Let's see. When I'm looking for my creme brulee is still a slight wiggle in them. Nope, they're wiggling a little too much, so we're going to give them about 10 more minutes. I'd say 5 to 10 more minutes. And we're going to let this simmer, and then I'm going to show you how to finish it all off. So our soup has been nicely simmering for about 30 minutes, and we have perfect timing because our creme brulee is ready to get out of the oven, so I'm going to get that cooling. And then I'm going to show you how to finish our soup. Oh, look at that. They're just beautiful. I'm going to show you exactly what I'm looking for when I remove my creme brulee from the oven. If you can see, I'm going to touch it really quick. They're still jiggly. It looks like they're undercooked, but they're not. We're going to let them come to room temperature so we can handle them. Then we're going to put them in the refrigerator to cool, and by the time we go to serve them, they'll be perfectly chilled and custardly set. Let's get those over here. Those are going to cool. Now, to finish our soup off, we are going to use this hand blender in our pot, because it's a one-pot wonder, to blend the soup all together. So now, I've halfway done our soup, or blended it, excuse me. I'm going to add some fresh thyme. I'm adding it more towards the end because I'm just using the little leaves, and I don't want them to burn so much. I could put the whole stalk in there before I was cooking the soup and fish it out later, but I just want the essence of thyme. I don't really want it to overpower, so I'm just using the tender little leaves in my soup. I'm going to add those in, and then I'm going to go to the refrigerator and get some cream for our soup. I'm going to add add that to our pot as well. Get that in there. The cream is going to give this soup a very nice velvet texture. Then I'm going to cream it and mix it once again. Okay, so our soup looks like it's thickened up nicely. So the consistency that I'm looking for is called nappe. What nappe means is I'm going to dip my spoon into my soup, I'm going to run my finger down it, and if it holds that line, then it's at the perfect consistency that I want. So I'm just going to dip my spoon in here, run my finger, and see how it's holding that line? That's the perfect nappe consistency that I want for my soup, right there. That means our soup is done. So I'm just going to clear this off, put this right here, and now I'm going to show you how I plate my soup. We're going to take a bowl, ladle some soup in, one more ladleful, because y'all know I'm hungry, right? Okay, clean off the edge. Then I'm going to take first my crème fraiche. Crème fraiche is basically like the French version of sour cream, and it's almost like sour cream and like Philadelphia cream cheese combined. That's what you get, and it's crème fraiche. I'm going to do a dollop of that, sprinkle it with fresh chopped chives, go right on top of there for some brightness. Then I'm going to drizzle in some white truffle oil. Be very mild with this product because a lot of it will be very intense. I just want the essence of truffle. I don't want too much, so I'm just going to do a quick little drizzle on that. That's good. Finish it off with a little bit of salt and pepper. And then I'm going to add a little microgreens just to make it look so pretty, because we eat with our eyes first and everybody wants to eat something that's pretty. So we're going to do that right there. And voila. And y'all know me, I have to try it before I serve it to my guests. So let's see how I did. Super earthy, and the cream and that crème fraiche is so delicious. And this is a great dish to pair with the pheasant that I'm going to make as well.
Wilderness to Table is brought to you by
We are going to make a pheasant ballotine with our wild game pheasant. So to get our ballotine started, we're going to first start with the stuffing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my pat of butter and I'm going to get my stovetop going. I'm going to melt that butter, and while that is melting, I'm going to chop my shallots for my stuffing. I'm going to chop 2 shallots, just a rough chop. It doesn't have to be perfect or anything. What I do love about this recipe, though, is the use of the pheasant. The fat on the prosciutto acts so nicely with the pheasant breast, because pheasant is really lean and it doesn't have a lot of fat. So that fat on the prosciutto helps to keep it nice and moist, and it won't dry out. And the way we are going to cook it in the sous vide water bath will just help ensure all that moisture is well kept in that pheasant breast, and our pheasant breast doesn't dry out. I really love, obviously, have become passionate about wild game meat. I love going and sourcing my own meat in the field, which I have done with these pheasants. I actually got this pheasant with my dog. She actually brought it back to me, so that's something super special for me. Very proud of that. And the taste of pheasant can be off-putting to some people at the beginning, but once you've had it, I've had it many times, you will begin to crave the taste of wild game. It's so pure, it's organic. My pheasant that was right here lived a natural, organic life, fed on natural ingredients, the way nature was intended. You know, some of our animals weren't intended to eat the feed that we're feeding, say our cows or our chickens, but this pheasant was eating like the leaves, the nuts, the tree, you know, the plants, the grass, the cloves, everything. All natural. That's why I prefer wild game, and I actually really love the taste of it. Now that our shallots are chopped, we're going to get that into the pan and get those sweating. Reduce our heat just a little bit. Get the rest in there. We're going to throw in some sprigs of thyme for flavor. We're going to swish around the pan to get that started. And remember, always layer the flavors. We're going to layer salt. We're going to layer pepper on everything that we put in the pan because we always want to brighten up those flavors and intensify them. A little pepper. So while that is cooking, we're also going to get in our mushrooms. As soon as these brown, shallots cook really fast, so they brown pretty quickly, which is pretty awesome in my book. Plus they taste so much better than onions. Sometimes, in this dish, they're better than onions. A shallot is like a cross between a garlic and an onion. So it has this really unique flavor that onions don't have, and that's why I'm using shallots in my stuffing instead of a regular onion. And I'm not putting garlic in this because the shallots carry enough flavor into it. Now I'm adding my mushrooms, and I'm going to give them a good toss so that they get all surrounded by that butter. Let those brown it. And remember, season again. Season, hit it with a little bit of salt. Hit it with a little bit more pepper. Now that they are getting coated with that, so like I said, sometimes you don't have to add garlic because of the shallots, because they do have a garlicky flavor. And once I get to the color, which I'm just about, that I'm happy with my onions, garlic, and mushrooms, I'm going to go ahead and add my port wine. Oh, that's the sound that I love so much. And this is called deglazing your pan. So now what I'm going to do is go in with my spatula and scrape the bottom of the pan. I want to release the fond. Fond is the little dark bits that are stuck to the pan. You want those. You don't want to wash them off. That is like flavor intensifiers, flavor bombs right there. You got to scrape those off and get them into your stuffing. So fond is your friend, not your foe, okay? Just remember that. I'm going to add a teeny bit more salt because we added the wine. I'm going to let that reduce for just a little bit. And while I do that, I'm going to get an orange and I'm going to zest it, and I'm going to add the zest of one orange. Zest from an orange is going to release all the essential oils in that orange skin, and it's going to give a brightness to our stuffing. It's going to add some acidity. I don't need the orange juice. That's why I'm going with the zest. So we're just going to zest probably about half of this orange because it's a pretty good size orange. So we don't need all of it, just a little. Maybe like a tablespoon of zest. We're going to stir that in. Mix that about. Looking beautiful. Now we're going to add in our chopped pecans right into the pan. We're adding those last to our stuffing because we don't want them to burn. Nobody likes when their nuts are burnt, so we want to keep them nice and toasted, not burnt. We got that going. Then, to finish off our stuffing, we're going to add panko breadcrumbs. Panko breadcrumbs are going to keep our stuffing all together instead of falling apart everywhere, which will make it really easy to work with. And like I said, one more time, we're going to flavor just a little dash of salt and pepper every time you add in something. You just want to make sure those flavors are really intense and delicious. So we're going to work this all together until it looks like Thanksgiving stuffing, which it kind of is. The breadcrumbs are kind of like croutons for stuffing. We're going to get that working. It's really quick to put together the stuffing. So basically that is done. Now, I'm going to show you the next step. I'm just going to put these right here because I don't need them at the moment and I need some workspace. I'm going to take a sheet of plastic wrap because that's ultimately what my pheasant breasts are going to get wrapped in. And then I'm going to use my knife here and cut it off. And then I'm going to take my prosciutto and I'm going to lay it down, probably about 3 strips of prosciutto on my plastic wrap. This fat is going to ensure that my pheasant breast cooks so nice and tenderly and moist. It's going to keep all the moisture in there, plus the salt from the cured meat is just divine. Then I'm going to take my pheasant breast, I'm going to lay it down in the middle of my prosciutto. And then I'm going to take some of my stuffing and I'm going to lay it right down in the middle of my pheasant breast. A little more on top here, just like that. Then I'm going to take my plastic wrap, use it to help me roll my pheasant breast into a little sausage, just like this. Get rid of a little extra. Then we're going to roll it tightly, so you want to like kind of pull and tuck all at the same time because we want it to be tight. We don't want it to be loose. Then to get it the sausage that I want, we're just going to roll it just like this. So we get a little sausage like a pheasant breast wrapped in prosciutto. So now that we have one finished, I'm going to do the other one. Get a little stuffing back in there. Roll it on up, nice and tight. Give it a whirl. One more whirl. There we go. So it's all nice and tight. And see how they're even in size? That's exactly what we want because we want them to cook at the same speed and the same time to ensure that they're both done at the same time. So now, like I said, I'm going to cook these via sous vide. Sous vide is a great method for wild game. So now I'm just going to get these vacuum packed in a vacuum sealed bag and then I'm going to get them into my sous vide machine. So I'm cooking my Pheasant Ballotine via sous vide. Sous vide is nothing to be afraid of. In fact, it's something very wonderful. Sous vide in French technically means under vacuum. Vacuum sealers can be purchased at any big retailer, especially Cabela's or your Williams-Sonoma. Any kitchen store will carry a vacuum sealer. It sucks the air out and then seals it so that no air can get in. I'm going to drop in my Pheasant Ballotine right into the water, into the sous vide machine, and we're going to cook them in this water bath at 147 degrees. We're going to cook it for an hour. A sous vide machine can also be purchased at basically any kitchen store nowadays. You can even find them off of Amazon. They're easy to find. They're not expensive. Prices have come down in years. So it's a very reasonable tool. I suggest you get one for your kitchen arsenal. And that's it. We're going to let it set and we're going to let it cook until an hour is up. We're gonna get started on our Pomme puree and our glazed carrots. I've already chopped my Yukon Gold potatoes. I'm just gonna grab my pot and get them into a pot of water. And then I'm going to season them with salt. And we're gonna bring them to a boil and cook them for about 10 minutes. I chopped them all the same size, so again, they cook all evenly. Get that? Always season with salt. You really want your salt water, the water that you're cooking your potatoes in, to really taste like the ocean, because potatoes lack in flavor and that salt is really gonna embed in there and give them lots of flavor. So I'm gonna get this back on the stove. We're gonna turn that on, medium-high heat. Right there. Those are gonna cook, and while those cook, I'm gonna get ready and we're gonna do our heirloom carrots. So to begin our heirloom carrots, our glazed heirloom carrots, we're gonna get our stove on. I'm gonna add butter to my pan. We always start with butter. All good things start with butter, right? Then I got my beautiful heirloom carrots. These are gorgeous. Glazed carrots are super yummy. They're sweet, they're savory, they're delicious, and they're covered in butter. Butter makes everything better, in my opinion. So we got that going. We're gonna stir that around, get our butter all nice and melted and our pan up to temperature. We don't want our carrots to go into a cool pan because we want them to cook and kind of get that caramelization. And caramelization happens when you put something into a hot pan. So that's really important. Now that our butter is melting, we're gonna get our carrots in. Now, we're going to cook these, roll them around, get them all tossed in that butter, making sure that they're all covered. Spread them out in the pan. You don't want them crowded too much, just like that. Then, of course, we're gonna always season. Season with salt, season with pepper. Get that going. So now, basically, how we're gonna cook these is super simple. We're gonna add some dry sherry and some chicken stock, and they're actually going to basically poach, but then the liquid is going to evaporate, and it's gonna create this beautiful glaze on the carrots. So it's pretty remarkable, and they're so yummy, and it creates a sauce all on its own. So now I'm gonna go ahead and add my dry sherry. Love that sound. Makes me a happy camper, that sound. And then I'm gonna add in homemade chicken stock. Yes, I always make homemade chicken stock from my whole chickens that I roast in the oven. Always save your bones, just a tip. So now, I'm going to let this simmer until the liquid has evaporated, and then the carrots will be cooked, nice and tender and slightly al dente. They're not gonna cook through all the way. You kind of want a little bit of snap in those carrots. So we're gonna let those hang out. And then our final ingredient to make this super yummy is a little bit of sugar. So we're gonna sprinkle the sugar on. You may think that sugar, why would I be putting sugar into a savory dish? But this sugar actually really highlights the sweetness of the carrots. It highlights it really well. It doesn't make them sweet at all, like, you know, a dessert or anything. It just enhances the flavors. In fact, lots of ways to enhance your food is to always add a dash of sugar, which I highly recommend. If you're not getting your flavors quite how you like it, just add a dash of sugar and a pinch of salt and you might just get there. Okay, so we're gonna let that simmer, and our potatoes are cooking, and we've got our Pheasant Ballotine in the sous vide. So our potatoes have cooked. I've drained off the water, and I'm gonna run them through my ricer. I like using a ricer for my potatoes because I prefer the texture it gives, but if you don't have a ricer, they do sell them at kitchen stores, but you can also use a masher as well. So what we're gonna do to get these potatoes going is get them into my ricer, just like this. You load it up and we're gonna just press it through. I like the texture of the ricer, and then I don't really have to do anything after they go through the ricer, which is really nice. Get that going. Beautiful. And traditionally, the French pomme puree is always done through a ricer, but you know, y'all can use a masher as well. So we're gonna just get all of these in there, pass them all through. Then we're gonna start adding more flavoring agents to our potatoes. Perfect. Run that. We're all done with the ricer. Just gonna put it over here, get it out of the way. Now I'm gonna season my pomme puree. I'm going to add butter. Of course, we can't have French potatoes without butter. More butter, more butter. And then I'm always gonna season with salt and pepper, more salt. Potatoes absorb a lot of salt, so don't be stingy, but don't be overly zealous on your salt on potatoes as well. Now I'm just gonna fold that in, fold my butter and salt, and now I'm going to add some chopped garlic. Because my potatoes are still hot, it's still gonna warm that garlic up nice. And aromatics, all the aromatics are gonna come out from the heat from the potatoes. I'm gonna mix that in. Oh my gosh. Once that garlic hit those hot potatoes, the smell is just infectious. It's so delicious. I can smell it already. Now, I'm folding everything gently in because I don't wanna overwork my potatoes, because then they'll become, the best term I can describe it is gluey, and nobody wants gluey potatoes. We want pureed potatoes, not gluey potatoes. Now I'm gonna add in my cream, a little bit of heavy cream. I like to back off on my cream and not put the whole amount on, because depending on how much water those potatoes soaked up, I'm gonna adjust my heavy cream accordingly. So I like to go off of the texture of my potatoes as opposed to following a recipe true to form. So I'm just, see how like they've absorbed the cream already? I want them a more silkier version of this, so I'm gonna go ahead and add a little bit more cream. I still have a little bit more cream left over, but while I do that, I'm gonna add in some crème fraiche. Crème fraiche is such a wonderful ingredient. It's delicious. It's a French version of sour cream, so it's kind of like cream cheese and sour cream combined, so who doesn't like that? And it's amazing in potatoes. It makes them creamy and velvety and luscious. I mean, you just won't want to stop eating these potatoes. I'm just gonna fold that in. Now they're becoming the consistency that I'm looking for, which is a puree, not a mash, a puree. So look at that. See how they're slightly runny? That's the puree version of potatoes. If I wanted a mash, it'd be slightly thicker, obviously. So I want my texture to be just a little bit more silky. So I'm gonna add just a hint more of cream and get those going. And voila, my potatoes, my pomme puree is all done now. And look at our carrots. They're done too. So now what we're gonna do, I'm gonna get my Pheasant Ballotine out of the sous vide machine, and then I'm gonna show you how to make my red wine sauce to go with it. Our Pheasant Ballotines have finally finished cooking in the sous vide water bath. I'm gonna get them out of the bag. Ooh, it's so vacuum sealed so well that it took it all out. Okay, so here they are, fully cooked. And then I'm going to get my pan nice and hot because I'm gonna sear them, and I'm gonna create a nice crust around them so that it's gonna add some texture. Everybody likes to bite into that nice crispy crust. I'm gonna add a few tablespoons of canola oil to my pan to help it not to stick. I'm gonna get that pan nice and hot. And while that's getting hot, I'm gonna unwrap our Pheasant Ballotines. Just super easy. And they're all gonna stay together nicely once I remove them from the plastic wrap. so beautiful. Just love that. The wonders of sous vide. It just cooks everything so perfectly. Low and slow is always the way to go in cooking. Good rule to live by. And these are perfect form for us to sear now. Just gonna wipe this off my board. And now our pan should be getting nice and hot. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and get my Ballotines into the pan and let them sear. Perfect. I'm gonna sear them on all sides. Let those go. Don't move them. When they're searing in a pan, the key part is to not move them. Don't touch them. Let them get that good Maillard reaction happen. Maillard reactions are caramelization, so we want those caramelizations to happen. But if we keep moving them, they'll never happen. I can see it starting to happen on the edges. See how they're stuck? They'll eventually release nicely. Okay, we're gonna turn it over. Look at that, beautiful and golden and brown. And this one, perfect sear. Oh yeah. And then we're gonna do them on the sides as well. We want the caramelization to happen all the way around our Pheasant Ballotine. Looking good, looking good. So beautiful. Looking pretty dang good to me. I'm gonna turn my pan off. Now, you always wanna let your game rest. So now I'm going to let my Pheasant Ballotines rest for at least 5 minutes before I cut into them because I don't want the juices to start running off. Next, I'm gonna empty out a little bit of this oil and I'm gonna show you how I make my red wine sauce to top my Pheasant Ballotines. So to finish our Pheasant Ballotine, I'm gonna make a quick pan sauce. We're gonna get our pan on the heat, about medium heat. I'm gonna add some butter to it. Get that in there. Then I'm gonna sweat some shallots so I can nicely sweat them. Get that going. Give that a stir. We wanna scrape the bottom of the pan to get that fond off. See how that is? Oh my gosh, look at that flavor. That's the flavor from searing the pheasant that we wanna keep in our sauce. And now we're gonna season with a little salt and pepper. A little pepper. Beautiful. So I want my sauce to be a little bit thick. So right now, I'm actually going to add a little dash of flour to my pan. Just gonna hand measure it just a little. Maybe like half a tablespoon. Get that going. I'm gonna mix that all in. It's just gonna help thicken it to the consistency that I want. You can not add it if you'd like. I like that velvety texture in sauces and I like them to have a little bit of thickness to them. So there we go. Now I'm gonna add my tomato paste in and get that all. Basically, I'm gonna kind of toast my tomato paste and that is gonna bring such amazing flavor to this pan sauce. So I'm just gonna melt it all in with my shallots. And once I get that mixed in, I'm gonna add my garlic. This sauce is super easy to make. And it's so delicious. I'm gonna get my garlic into the pan because I didn't want to burn it, so that's why I didn't add it in the beginning. Now I'm gonna saute all these together. Make sure My tomato paste, I kind of want it to darken to a reddish brown color. It's almost like I'm roasting that tomato paste in the pan, and that is where all the flavor is. So we're gonna do this just a little bit. Keep moving the pan, always scraping. You wanna scrape those bits off on the pan. Now, I'm gonna add my red wine. Oh, that sound is just heaven. I'm gonna let it go. Now, I'm going to let the heat do all the work for me, and I'm just gonna stir my sauce, and I'm gonna let it reduce to the consistency that I want, and I'm gonna burn off some of the alcohol in that wine so you don't taste it in the sauce. And we're gonna get this beautifully dark red colored sauce. It's gonna go wonders with our Pheasant Ballotine. It's really just gonna finish off all the hard work we put into prepping for our pheasant. So now I'm just gonna let this simmer. And while I'm just gonna let this simmer. And then once it's done and up to the consistency, we're going to plate it all together. We're gonna plate those mashed potatoes, those glazed carrots, and we're gonna slice into our Pheasant Ballotine. Look at the texture on this sauce. It is so beautiful. Okay, now that my sauce has finished, I'm gonna take it off the heat, and I'm going to add in just a few black truffles. These are gonna add such a beautiful earthiness to our sauce. I'm adding them off the heat because I don't want them to burn. They're so precious. I don't want anything to happen, and they have such great flavor. They're gonna infuse our sauce so beautifully. I mean, I love the flavor of truffles. To me, there is like no better flavor in the world than truffles. So I'm gonna get those all going in the pan. And now, we're gonna slice into our Pheasant Ballotine. I'm gonna take my carrots off the heat. Get a knife. I'm gonna use a serrated knife because it's gonna help me cut through our pheasant. Ooh. Look at how beautiful this is. Oh my gosh, this is gorgeous. Can y'all see that? Look how perfectly cooked it is. And the crust, it's moist. Oh my goodness, I just cannot wait to try this. I can't wait for you to make this and try this as well. So y'all need to get out there and go pheasant hunting. I'm gonna slice my other one. Oh my goodness, it's so delicious. So now we're gonna go ahead and plate our Pheasant Ballotine. I'm gonna spoon some of our Pomme puree onto our plate. Don't wanna make a mess while I'm at it. A good dollop. I'm gonna do a little swish just to make it pretty. Then I'm gonna grab some of my carrots that turned out beautifully, all cooked in their glaze. I'm gonna make a little bed for my ballotines. Like that. Look at those colors, they're so beautiful. Then for a little touch of color, I'm just gonna sprinkle a little parsley on top of my carrots. And then I'm going to top it with my sliced Pheasant Ballotine. Just like that. Then I'm going to spoon in my Red Wine Truffle Sauce right over my pheasant. Look at that. Can y'all see that? Look how amazing that is. Y'all are gonna love this recipe. It is well worth the time and effort it takes to make it. And because this dish is special, we're gonna top it off just for a little garnish of some black truffles, just to emphasize those flavors, just like that. Oh my God, it smells so good. And there you have it, my Pheasant Ballotine with red wine truffle sauce, pomme puree, and glazed heirloom carrots. But before I go anywhere with this dish, I have to try it because that smell is just, it's so amazing. I cannot wait to try my pheasant. Pheasant that I've hunted nonetheless. So, that sous vide, the method of sous vide cooked my pheasant to perfection. And the sauce goes amazing with the stuffing and the prosciutto and the pheasant and the pomme puree. And these glazed carrots add such a wonderful sweetness to the dish. Y'all, this recipe is a keeper. And you're gonna wanna keep this for a long, long time. So our creme brulees just came out of the refrigerator and they're perfectly set now. So now I'm going to show you my Saba Whipped Cream that I'm going to top them with, and then we're going to brulee them. Now, to make life easier, I'm using this ISI canister to make my whipped cream. I have 1 cup of heavy cream. I'm just going to pour it right into the canister. Get it all in there. And I'm going to do everything in this one little canister. I have confectioner's sugar. I'm going to add about 2 spoonfuls to sweeten it up right into there. And then I'm going to drizzle in some Saba. Saba is a grape flavored like syrup basically. It's from Spain. It's so divine in flavor. I use it for savory items, for pastry items, anything. But it's going to add a great fall flavor to my creme brulee with that good grape musk. So see how thick it is? It's so beautiful. I'm going to add about 1.5 tablespoons, just enough to flavor my whipped cream. Got that in there. Now I'm going to remove this from my ISI canister. These are really fun to have in your house, and if you ever have just whipped cream in your refrigerator all the time, which you should, it's so easy to make whipped cream for ice cream, for anything at a moment's notice, because homemade is always better. Not almost, it's always better. So now I just have a nitrogen cartridge. I've just placed it in. Now I'm going to twist it down, and you're going to hear it charge. It's an awesome sound. Then we're just going to give it a little shake. Shake, shake, shake. Then I'm going to let that sit and mingle, get those flavors going. I really want to get that Saba, make sure it's really into that whipped cream. Let that sit. Now I'm going to show you how to brulee. So I have turbinado sugar. I like to brulee with turbinado sugar because I can do a thin layer of sugar, but this sugar in texture is really coarse. I like the coarseness because it creates like a thick crust, and it ensures that all the sugar is going to get nicely bruleed. So if you put too much sugar down of the white sugar, it might not all brulee, and you don't want that. So I am just going to top my creme brulee with a little bit of sugar, and then I'm going to show you how I get it all the way around. So I just take my cup and I gently tap and go in circular motions, ensuring that all that sugar is evenly. See, this creates an even layer of turbinado sugar on my creme brulee, and you can see that awesome jiggle. So now we know that our creme brulee is cooked perfectly. We do have a little extra sugar, so I'm just going to go ahead and dump that off, and voila, our creme brulee is perfectly covered in turbinado sugar. And now I'm going to use my kitchen torch to create that classic creme brulee crunch, which is the most important part of a creme brulee, right? That and the custard part. Now I'm just gonna give it a slight torch. Get that golden brown and ensure that all that sugar is caramelizing just the way I want it, but not burning. So don't hold your torch too close to the sugar. Just take your time with it and it'll get there. And you have to stop ahead of time because the sugar is still going to continue to cook. So if you think that it's done, you might need to pull away the torch early so that it doesn't burn your sugar. Because burnt sugar will taste really bitter. Voila. There we go. Our brulee is finished. So what I'm gonna do is give it one last shake for my Saba whipped cream. And I'm gonna add a dollop. Look how pretty it comes out. It's perfect. Oh, it's still hot, but that's okay. Voila. And there you have it. My chai spiced creme brulee with Saba whipped cream. Let's hear the crust. You hear that snap? That's exactly what you want to hear when you're eating creme brulee. And look at that custard. It's so luscious and perfect. We cooked it perfect. It tastes just like a chai latte. So delicious. And that Saba whipped cream adds that slight hint of grape, which is just divine. Y'all are gonna love this. Thanks for watching Wilderness to Table. Come back next time for more wild recipes.